So, all right. So in number one, yeah, all we want to do is get that y by itself. And that's what we've been doing when we've been solving equations all year. But now we're going to have to move some x terms around and some constant terms around, which is like pretty much the only new thing to us is having two variables in the equation at the same time and trying to get one of them by itself. So really in number one here, the only thing we have to do is remember, if we want to get rid of an x term, then we want to make the coefficient 0. And right now it's that's my highlighter. That's not going to work. Okay, right now it's a 1x. So there's a 1 in front of that x. If we want to turn it into a 0, then we have to do the opposite. So it's whatever the coefficient. Do you know what I mean when I say coefficient?
The opposite?
No,
or like the number.
The coefficient is the name for the number in front of a variable. So right now the y has a 1 in front of it technically, and the x has a 1 in front of it. Those are the coefficients. So yeah, in order to get rid of something on one side, we need to do the opposite. So what we're going to do is we're going to subtract 1x from both sides. All right, and we don't have to call it a 1x, but that's what it is. So I'm kind of just throwing it in there. We can just call it x. All right, but okay, so what that does is a positive 1x plus negative 1x gives me a 0x. Okay, so if we add these together, we get 0x. And of course, 0 times anything is 0, so that drops out. So on the left side, all we have left is that 1y now. So I'm going to bring that down. Okay, but what do we have to do on the other side? Can we add those two terms together, -3 and -1x?
No.
No, we can't. They're not like terms. So really, all we do is just put them next to each other like that. -x, -1x, -3. Or you could put the -3 first and the -1x second. Okay, both of these are okay answers because they're really the same equation, right? So, and you don't have to write it both ways. I'm just kind of showing you that both are correct. Okay, you just need to write it one way. So really, all we're doing is moving things around in the equation. As long as you keep doing what we've been doing and keep using opposites to get rid of things on one side and make sure you're doing the same thing to both sides, then you can't go wrong. Okay. So I want to skip to one that's a little bit more difficult. Like 2, you can probably figure out as well. But let's go ahead and do number 3. Okay. Okay. So we're trying to get y by itself. What is being done to y in this problem? Like on that right side, what's being done to y?
It's being subtracted.
Well, okay, so now think of it as multiplication though, because what's that number in front of y if it's not shown?
1.
It's a 1. So this is actually a -1y. All right, so that's how we're going to treat that. And then there's also this addition by 3 right here. All right, so we need to get rid of the addition by 3. If we're going to get y by itself, we need to get rid of the addition by 3, and then we need to get rid of the multiplication by -1. All right, so how do we do that?
You would -3 on both sides.
Exactly.
So you'd -3 from 3, and then -6 from -8.
Right, -8x. And remember, since those are not like terms, all we can do is just kind of throw them in there next to each other. All right, so if we write our line down here, all right, here's our equal sign right on that line. And then we bring down the -1y. Okay, so tell me my last thing that I need to do to get y by itself.
You would could you do anything else?
Yeah, we can. We have to. Matter of fact, if we're going to get y by itself, it's almost by itself, but it's not. It's got a -1 multiplying it.
Minus the 1.
Close, but remember, we're going to do the opposite operation.
You add.
The operation we have going on right here, this is multiplication. So, wow, that's a big dot.
Wait, where'd you get the laser pointer thing?
Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. There's when you share your screen, apparently a laser pointer button comes up. Can you see at the top of my screen?
Huh.
Like right here, or
yeah,
right here.
mm-hmm.
So Yeah, that's pretty cool. I guess I don't want to hold the laser tail though. That doesn't work. All right. So yeah, so we have multiplied, the y is still being multiplied by -1. So we have to undo that by doing division.
Uh,
So we're going to divide by -1. And remember, that gives me -1 divided by -1 gives me +1y. But then I have to divide the other terms by -1 as well. Don't forget to divide everything in the equation by -1. And really all that does is change the sign. You can see we have -8 divided by -1 would be a +8x. So that becomes +8x. And then my Apple Pencil battery is low. All right. So, and then -3 divided by -1 is a +3. So we're just going to put +3 in here. All right. And then we're done. We got y by itself. So that's all we need to do. So what we're saying is the equation y equals 8x plus 3, that's the same thing as the equation we started with. We just have y by itself.
Still, y only has to be by itself on one side.
Yeah, we just have to get y by itself on one side, and we do that by using the opposite operations, the same thing we've been doing all year when we're solving equations.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's take a look at one that's more difficult. And that one's pretty easy. I want to do one that's in standard form here. All right, so number 6. Okay, and then maybe we can do a couple from the puzzle worksheet on page 3, just to make sure you know how to do that. Okay, so yeah, this looks like one of the toughest ones on here because there's a lot going on this side with the y. Okay, but remember, this is our focus, so we're going to get rid of everything else. We always start with addition or subtraction, so we're going to start furthest away from the variable that we can. All right, so what do you think? What do we do first here?
You would add 6 to both sides.
Well, we could, but that's going to make things even more complicated. Now, I'm not saying you can't do this. You can, but if we do that, does that help us get y by itself?
No.
No, that actually complicates things over on the left side. That brings even more things over on the left side. So we don't want to do that. All right, we want to get whatever's on the side with y. I'm sorry?
Would you divide straight away though?
I wouldn't do that first, and I'll tell you why. Like, okay, if we're trying to get this y by itself, then we'd have to divide it by -2.
That's why I said subtraction. That's why I said, would you add it? Because I didn't think you would divide first, because we did it later on in the other problem.
Right. We will wait for that. And the reason I want to show you why we wait is because now if we divide it 3 by 2, now I get a fraction over here with my x, and that's not the end of the world, but we don't really like working with fractions. So this is what we would get if
it just makes it more complicated.
Right. It makes it more complicated. So let's do things in the right order to keep it as simple as we can. So let's get rid of that 3x first. All right. So this should be our focus. If we're trying to get y by itself, then tell me what I would do.
You would subtract.
Exactly. Since it's a positive 3x, if we take 3x away from that, we get 0x. Whoops. And then, of course, we have to do it to the other side. All right, so let's draw our line here. Make sure everything we do to one side, we're doing to the other. All right, so these are gone from the left side. We bring down the -2y. Watch that sign really carefully. I see a lot of students will drop that negative sign. It is attached to the y term, so we do have to bring that down. And then, like I said before, we can either put the x term first or we can put it second. Doesn't matter, but we can't mix those terms up. We can't combine them because they're not like terms. All right, so we essentially just move the x term to the side, and when you do that, you just change the sign of it. All right, so that's one shortcut that students like to think about. Like, I'm going to take this 3x, I'm going to move it over here, but we have to change the sign of that term in order to do that. Okay, now we're ready to divide, right? So we're going to divide. Now, to get that y by itself, we just have one thing left to do. We're going to divide everything by -2. And then we get y equals, so a -3 divided by a -2 is actually a positive 3/2 x. And then -6 divided by -2 is a positive 3. So there we go. Remember that it can't get any simpler than that because we have 3 different types of terms. We have a y term, an x term, and a constant term. All right. So is that
Can
making?
I ask a question about like the fraction?
Absolutely.
Like with the, does it matter what side it's on?
The fraction? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, does it always go before x or after x? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like should the x be in front of the fraction or is it behind it?
No, we always want to put the x behind the fraction because that's how we do it. Like, let me get my laser pointer out. We always put the coefficient, we put the number in front of the variable. So if you wrote x 3/2, it's technically, it means the same thing, but that's not how it's typically written. So we always want to put the x after the fraction.
Okay.
Just like these numbers here, the 3's in front of the x, the -2's in front of the y. That's just kind of how we write them. It would look weird. It would look weird if we wrote this as x3 minus y2. You know, people would get those. Sometimes people get those confused with exponents and stuff. So that's one of the main reasons we don't write them like that. It's just being consistent is all. All right. So if you can understand 6, like I said, that's one of the most complicated ones where we have to get y by itself because there's a lot going on the side with y. So
can we try number 8 on cryptic quiz?
Yeah, sure. Great.
Okay.
All right. So I may copy it and bring it down below so I can do some work, and I think you should do the same. So, whoops, let me get my box out here. There we go. So let's copy that. We'll bring it down here, and then we'll work on it. Okay. Yep, a lot going on here too, but let's see if you can figure it out. It's similar to the last problem we did. So what do we want to get rid of first on that side with y?
The negative 2x.
Bingo. And how do we do that?
You add.
Which one?
Oh, no, so you would add the 2x and then the negative 12.
Good. Okay, so yeah, give ourselves a line there. I can do better than that. So, okay, so the adding 2x to both sides cancels out the negative 2x because we get a 0 there. On the other side, like I said, we can't, so I'm going to write it the other way this time. It really doesn't matter until you go to look and find that answer. So let's do it this way, and I'll just show you what you can do if you're running into trouble where it's not matching up the way it should with the answers that are on the page. Okay, all right, so what's our last step here to get y by itself?
Divide negative 3 or positive 3y by everything.
By what do we divide everything by? What number?
3.
Right, positive 3. All right, so negative 12 divided by positive 3, 2x divided by positive 3. All right, so we get y equals, this will be negative 4, because the negative divided by a positive is still a negative, and this will be 2/3 x. Okay, so this is our answer, but remember, we can write these terms either way. So we're going to go back to the answers for the middle column, and we're going to look for y equals negative 4 plus 2/3 x. Well, we don't have, the x terms come first in all of these. You see that? All right. This is our answer, but it doesn't look exactly like what we have because you can switch these terms around. So if we put the positive 2/3 x first and then the negative 4 second, that's really what we're looking for there. So just make sure you always, in order for your answers to match up with what they have down here, make sure your x term always comes first and your constant term is always second.
Okay.
All right, so let's let's make sure we're doing the directions right. Solve each equation for y in terms of x, find your answer below, and notice the letter next to it. Each time the exercise number appears in the code, write this letter above it. So for all the 8s, because since that was problem number 8, for all the 8s we find, we're going to put a B there.
Okay.
And I think that's the only one. So,
yeah.
Yep. So that's it. Not too bad, right? You want to do another one?
Are there any word problem ones?
There's no word problems today. This is just, we're just
gosh.
learning this one skill, getting y by itself. This will come in very, very handy when we move on to bigger and better things in algebra, being able to solve an equation for y. But there's really no story problems that are associated with this skill. So good news for us, right?
Yeah.
No, this is all you got to do. You got to do these 12 problems on the practice part, and then you got to figure out the answers to the riddles by solving these 15 problems here.
Okay. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Have a good day.
All right, you too, Claire. See you later.
Bye.